I think there's some degree to which all of us think of ourselves as individuals. We're all on some level existing within our own skulls, um, but but that varies quite a lot across cultures. And that the reason for that, of course, is because as we grow up, we learn from our parents and our communities different ways of thinking of ourselves and understanding what we are and who we are. So the three of us are Americans, and we've written this book very much in the context of American culture and American politics. And American culture is, if not the most, then very much one of the most individualistic cultures ever. And so I think the real significant barriers are the ones that are embedded in the particularly American and Western cultural history of individualism. So we tell the story in the beginning of the book of many different ways in which that culture of individualism was cultivated and grown, often for strategic purposes, oftentimes at the behest of people who wanted to maintain power and make money by using that message. So, for instance, the sort of opening scene in the book tells the story of how, at the very early days of automobiles taking off in the 1920s, there was a real concern about safety for people walking in the streets, because at that point, kids would be running around in the streets and people would stop and chat in the middle of the street. And it was in cities in particular, the streets were just a thoroughfare for life. And all of a sudden now you have cars driving fast down the road, and there is skyrocketing rates of pedestrian injuries and deaths. And what the car companies saw was the possibility that cities and states would impose laws to protect people. So, for instance, in Cincinnati, there was a effort to force car companies to install a device which they called a governor, to make it so that cars could only go 25 miles an hour or less. The Automobile Association did a lot of work to prevent that policy from being enacted. And what they did instead was they did a public relations campaign to make individual people feel responsible for their own safety. And they invented a term which is still with us today, which is a jaywalker. So it was a portmanteau of being a jay, which was a country bumpkin. It was an insult. And then somebody who walks into the street, like not paying attention. So the idea was like, let us, the car companies, keep making as many cars as possible. And let's get people to think of themselves as the ones who have to deal with this problem.